Well, the sacking of Minister Wale Edun has brought the issue of the economy back to the front burner. Well, not like it really left anyway, but this has further provided more talking points and well, areas of not just analysis, but trying to just measure how well this government is performing in that area. So, we're joined on the program this morning by Mr. Fasua, Special Advisor to President Tinubu on Economic Affairs. And I must add that he was once a presidential candidate of the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party. Mr. Fasua, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kadi. Thanks for the invite. It's good to be here.
I know. I'm sure you've probably forgotten that side of you that ran for president. And that's not why we're here. Yes, but I just recall that was a thing for you. Now you're working with the president. But naturally, we're going to start with what has been whispered in the corridors of the presidential villa, that there are more possible sacks, reshuffling to follow. I mean, is this causing shivers to run down maybe your spine and others who are thinking, are we next? Is the president is he wielding the big stick anytime soon again?
I guess that's on a lighter note, you know. I don't listen to rumors. I just focus on my work. And of course, it's Mr. President's prerogative to reshuffle his cabinet. You know, yesterday I was thinking about it, like Mr. President is like a team coach. You know, so in an active match, the coach has the prerogative to say, yeah, number 9, come on, let somebody who's on the bench take your place and all of that, you know. And so that's the way it works in order to get the required results and to enhance the performance of the team. So it's his prerogative, absolutely, to make the changes as and when due, and whenever he thinks he wants to do that.
Right. So a lot of reasons have been put forward as to why this happened, but I think it's important to get a better understanding of the strategic direction of the president when it comes to the economy. You advised the president, and there was a time in this country we had almost 3 budgets running at the same time. You recall the 2024 budget was extended, a part of it was extended and extended further to this year. We had 2025 budget as well extended, and then the 2026 budget literally all at the same time. We've had ministries, particularly ministers, before the National Assembly saying, well, we've not been getting the monies that we're meant to get as ministries. So our hands are tied in that sense. And we've had even contractors complaining that we've not been paid. So for a lot of people, they look at these indicators and it's worrisome, right? So for them, it's no surprise that the minister, Wale Edun, was removed and replaced by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. But help us understand the thinking of the president in terms of strategy for the Nigerian economy right now.
Right, thank you very much. I can't comment on the minister's replacement. That's beyond my pay grade. But I can comment about the economy and the strategic import of Mr. President's thinking around the economy. This is a reform-minded economy where we have been able to take on some of the reforms that most people dared not to, and we can actually keep listing them, whether it was around the removal of fuel subsidy or the recalibration of the Naira or the tax reform, which is the first in 35 years, or even though the Executive Order 09, which is also a reform, and also other reforms in other sectors, solid minerals and what have you. You know, so we will probably continue with these reforms because you don't quit on this kind of reforms midway. And of course, we've also begun to see a lot of the upsides of the reforms. One thing, you mentioned a few things around budget implementation and all of that. I think also that was because of the transition period. And I think that will also continue to happen along transition years. In 2023, when Mr. President came in, the 2023 budget was already running. The Buhari government did something good in the year 2020 around COVID, perhaps because there was that general slowdown around that year. That was when we were able to have the budget starting in January and culminating in December. Before then, it had never happened. I remember even in the Jonathan days, we had instances where budgets would be signed off in August for the very year. So right now, I mean, this is March. We had this budget already presented in December, you know, going back and forth, and then amendments came, and then we saw this final culmination in March. And not too bad. And this year we're running two budgets because 2025 budget was meant to terminate in March, has been extended to June ending to allow us to be able to perform better on that budget. And of course, as you know, every budget is an act. And because it's an act, it is a law that must be implemented. It can't be vitiated just like that. And that's the reason why we have this. And of course, I'm just saying that it's going to get better. Perhaps in 2027, we're going to see a tighter ship whereby maybe we don't have to carry over 2026 into 2027, and then we're going to have just one budget in that year and going forward. So it's a transition thing. And of course, when you mentioned, of course, there's a critical issue about contractor payment. I want to let you know that it's actually something happening at the federal only, and for one reason, because many contractors tell me these days, if I see them, they say, oh, they'd rather work at the state level because the states are awash with liquidity. Honestly, it's incredible. I mean, the World Bank, in that same, you know, contentious World Bank National Development Update, Nigeria Development Update, they showed a statistic whereby the state spending on capital was 4 times the spending of the federal government on capital. The federal government spending on capital was, you know, significantly much lower than what they did at the state level. And that's because the calibration of this economy since Mr. President came is to empower the states and also empower the local government. Mr. President has pushed for local government autonomy. Some states have already allowed that. States like Lagos State, they've already started to really empower the local government. Some local governments are getting billions every month. And it's in the local governments that the action is. Local government is where everybody lives. So I think one of the things that Mr. President started to show is that there's been too much emphasis on the federal for everything. Of course, if you look at it and take it to even issues of debt, borrowing, you know, federal government has been left to carry 93% of the borrowings of Nigeria, whereas only the states have just 7%. And I've been letting some of the states know that, look, this is the time. The development, the economic and social development, the onus of that has been pushed back to the subnational, especially the state. And if this is the case, you know, the state governments, maybe they'll have to come together, maybe under the development commissions that they have. Now is the time for us to approach markets, go into serious infrastructural development. We need rail systems to cover the whole country. You know, we need power systems that will take us out of this present quagmire that we have in that sector. We need development in the solid mineral sector to add value and beneficiate many of the solid minerals that we have. Now is the time for us to step up at the subnational level and not leave everything to the federal level. Because again, I mean, the federal has carried so much. All the major infrastructural projects of this country being done by the federal government. That should not be the case. 93% to 7%. In the Second Republic, it wasn't like that. The states, even though we had a problem, we didn't have a debt management office, so the states went, you know, haywire. But I think we have more systems to keep everybody in check, to borrow for only project-tied loans that have cash flow themselves. We are a lot much wiser. There's social media. There's you guys in the media to keep everybody in check. So now is the time to imagine development and to move forward, not just say, oh, President Bola Tinubu is going to make sure that we develop. No, the development should happen at the state level. They have the impetus, they have the cash flow to leverage, they have very good balance sheets right now, and so they should go for it.
All right, Mr. Fasua, well said. I think when we look at the Bola Tinubu administration, President Bola Tinubu administration, it's a mixed bag. The argument has always remained one. And that argument stems from the fact that based on the optimization he did because of the reality he saw on ground by taking out the wage bill, aka subsidies and partial subsidy on some sectors, we can see some increment, in fact, record increment in terms of Naira terms for the FAC allocation. So that's a plus. We can also talk about the issue of external reserves. That's also a plus. We can also talk about the debt service to revenue that has given us a bit of a leeway to be able to spend a bit more, that's a plus. But the bigger concern, which is what I want persons like you to either be very emphatic in providing, I don't know, maybe a clear answer for the people, or what you think as an economist is fair answer. The compounding effect at the microeconomic level. I know when we speak to you most of the time, I talk about the subnational level, and I totally agree with you. Some of the biggest recklessness is said to be happening at the subnational level. But you speak for the federal government, so I'm going to stay with you at the federal level. So the first thing I want to find out from you, what happened with the president's promise? This is what he said in December, I think, when he was presenting that budget. A couple of questions I have on my mind. First, so we are terminating the habit of running through a budget on one inflow. By March 31st, 2026, you mentioned in the past, in all capital liabilities from previous years will be fully funded and closed. Since April, Nigeria has operated a single budget backed by a single revenue cycle. No overlaps, no excuses, no rollover cultures. It was one of the things I like about the president. He speaks straight up, so I can hold him accountable straight up. What happened that we had to extend the budget again? Because he has also failed to uphold what he promised in December.
Well, I think you asked two questions there. One is about the shifting of the 2025 budget to June, and the other is about, I think you tried to ask
trickling down, the compounding effect of the policy, yes, from the big dashboard exactly. To everyday person.
Now, let me start with the trickle down. Let me start with the trickle down issue. Even though some economists will tell you these days that the real solution is in trickle up. Give the money to the poor people before they break. They're going to buy sugar from the people that produce sugar, buy the fuel, buy all sorts of things, and then the money goes back up, So, however, one of the key things to explain on that trickle down, the fact that people allegedly people are a lot poorer, which I disagree with. But the fact is that if you see that most of the spending is happening at the subnational level, including local governments where I say they give billions, some of them get billions every month, that means that money is actually trickling down. Now, the question will now be, okay, can we put more touchlight on what happens at the subnational to ensure that the money doesn't just get pocketed? And many of the governments are doing incredibly well, honestly. And of course, many of them are also interested in hard infrastructure. So the question now becomes, do we share the money to the people because the people are hungry, or do we build infrastructure? And in building infrastructure, we're employing people, we're having contractors, laborers are getting jobs, and so on. So the world has changed actually in significant ways in the last few years. And the way it is right now is that business models have changed. National business models for countries have changed. Business models for companies have changed. Business models for individuals have changed. If you don't position yourself in a way to make money, you're not going to get anything. And of course, even in Nigeria here, we can see people who do social media, skits and all of that, people who just come and even create a nuisance on social media, they get the clicks, they get paid. We see many times these people, some of them are buying big cars and running around the whole place. Meaning that business models have changed. If you say, I've gone to university, I have a great degree, and so I need a work to come and meet me, it's not going to come and meet you. You have to go out there and actually apply yourself, because all over the world, in the last few weeks, the major. Let me land on this. Let me kindly land, please. Let me land, Jeff. Let me land. So in the last few weeks, we've seen major companies in the world. Tech companies, Google, Meta, and so on, Amazon, laying off tens of thousands of people. So this is a new world we live in. Nobody's going to come and feed anybody. It's very tough, even though I'm not saying that we will not try, but of course that is not a sustainable model for where Nigeria is right now. So regarding the budget issue, like I said in my opening remarks, that we are seeing a gradual improvement. I mean, last year we had 3 budgets. This year we have 2 budgets up to June. Of course, when you have to make adjustments like that, governance is an ongoing process. You may assume that you're going to get some numbers at some point in time and then not get it. But I must say, let me close with this, that the key issue now is that we have signed a tax reform. That tax reform has kicked in. Nigeria has a huge informal economy. Informal economy, we're not talking about the people who are struggling to make, we're talking about huge money that is moving below the radar. And for one of the focus of this tax reform is to be able to claw back some of that and, of course, get people to be accountable who are moving money. Nigeria is the second country for cryptocurrency trading in the whole world. We saw a Nigerian show up as the seventh largest asset owner in London the other time. We have all of these kind of indices. Nigeria is a country where MTN makes up 40% of its profit for the past 25 years.
Just a moment,
Nigeria
sir.
Nigeria is not a poor country.
Just a moment, sir. Which is why, if you can allow me, just a moment. I understand your trail of thought because we've engaged you a couple of times. That's why I started by saying it's a mixed bag. But that doesn't take away the people that are struggling. There's something I call the egg standard. What's my own egg standard from an economic point of view? I used to buy eggs, say, 20 naira, 50 naira. One day I went to buy, and they say it's 250 naira or 200. I was shocked. I had to go to the next shop because I wasn't sure what I was hearing. And recently I also asked this, the price has stayed that way. So somewhere in my head, I'm using the egg as a standard to say, let me see how the gains will bring the price of egg from what it is right now and see how it can trickle down in terms of numbers. The purchasing power of the Nigerian population is quite low. And the president has constantly acknowledged this. But sometimes, those of you who speak for the government, I don't want to use it. I'm careful the word I use. Because the way you're sounding, it sounds like people are not taking advantage of the good reform or the good aspect of the reform. It is the inactivity of the people to see opportunity rather than the policy of government that is keeping people where they are. So I want to ask you emphatically, is it that the economy is good and people are not taking advantage, or this is what they have to deal with because for now it's going to bite harder? So we're clear on what you're saying.
So clearly, what I'm saying clearly is that it's our role to ensure that people take more advantage of what's going on. If the states are spending so much on capital, 4 times of what the federal government is spending, the action is at the state level and at the local government level. If Mr. President has pushed for local government autonomy, then the media, yourself inclusive, should put more, more attention on that. I mean, I'm also against this whole narrative of pushing Nigeria, oh, poverty is killing everybody, Nigeria is not a poor country. Maybe we're talking about inequality. The other time, Mr. Dangote, the richest man in Nigeria, said that he couldn't find a place to park his private jets in the airport, meaning that more people are buying private jets, and he said, let people start companies. We have an inequality issue, okay? Even though it's not as bad as what they have in maybe South Africa or Namibia or Zimbabwe or all those places, or even the US or even in China. We are better than them. However, we still have an inequality crisis. So can you shift the narrative to inequality? Can you shift the narrative to informality? Because if a lot of money is escaping government and escaping...
Mr. Fasua, Nigeria is a poor country. What data? I don't know what data you're working with, because just hold on, sir.
When you ask people questions,
no, I'm not trying to cut your thoughts.
You want to take the narrative and run with it.
No, because
it's not right for you to take the narrative.
No. You're putting out. We're debating facts. We're debating facts. The data has shown multi-dimensional poverty in the region of over 100 million people. Multi-dimensional poverty.
Okay. Have you landed? Okay. So you asked me a question when you cut me off midstream. You're not letting me land, and therefore I'm not making my point. I'm sure you didn't invite me here to embarrass me. But let me tell you, you mentioned multidimensional poverty. The last report was in 2022 by the MBS. I've also engaged the MBS that we need to have more frequent data on that. Multidimensional poverty is what is called non-income poverty, meaning that beyond people who earn, how close are they to the school, how close are they to the sporting centers, to the health centers, and all of that. Those kind of, how close are they to the bridge, to the roads? That's what it means. Now we're saying that and I want you to please get the World Bank NDU, and you'll see there. It clearly, there's a graph that they showed that the states and the local governments are spending more on capital. Now we need to update that in the multidimensional poverty report to show that a lot more money has been spent on health center. Even under Minister Pate, They've refurbished 4,000 health centers. Under the minister, Tunji, there's a lot of great reforms that's going on in the educational sector. So we cannot be hanging on the 2022 report when things must have changed on ground as we speak. That is what I'm saying. So I'm actually challenging the media in Nigeria that, look, if we have a poverty problem, we agree we have a poverty problem. Millions of people are poor in Nigeria. Millions of people are waking up this morning. They're wondering, okay, what do we eat next? Where do we go? Millions of fathers don't know where to go for work. And all, that is correct. However, how do we solve it? I quote Karl Marx. Karl Marx said that philosophers have analyzed the world on end, but the point is to change it. So we have been analyzing poverty on end, but the point is to change it. How do we change it? How do we change the scenario? Otherwise, it becomes voyeurs. It becomes voyeuristic that we just want to laugh at the poor people. Right. If we are not interested in laughing at the poor people, then we will think about how to change it. Right. And how to change it is to focus on inequality and informality and solve that problem. Then the money comes down to the poor people of this country. And of course, we also let them know that the world is changing and everybody must actually brace up because the world is going gaga right now with artificial intelligence and all of these things going on. Thank you.
All right. A number of things from what you have said may be debatable. If you say more funding is going to the grassroots and the states, many are asking that the states are getting more allocation, but what are they spending it on? Even the president has said to the subnationals, wet the grass more. If you say that the Ministry of Health has gotten more funds, well, unless there's an update, what we know is that last year, the Ministry of Defense only got 36 million as part of its funding. So well, unless there's an update to that effect, sir. But what is critical in all of this debate is funding. And this is also at the heart of the cabinet reshuffle that we have seen. And so I'd like to tie this with some reports that have come through recently, as the mainstream media is reporting that from the open treasury portal, the Ministry of Defense only got 7% of its proposed budget for defense equipment in 2025. And to put it in proper context, I'd like to read from that report for you. Details of the 2025 budget performance posted on the portal, that's the open treasury portal, showed that of the 20.56 billion naira budgeted by the Nigerian Army for the purchase of security equipment, only 1.46 billion naira, representing 7.11%, was disbursed as at December 31, 2025. Whereas records on the portal further revealed that, I'd like to go straight to the maintenance of the presidential aircraft. The National Air Force is also reporting a reduction, 13% of what it budgeted for the purchase of aircraft for the Air Force. But all of that is a sharp contrast with 20.27 billion naira disbursed for the running of the presidential air fleet, for which 20.7 billion naira budgeted was released. That's 97.76%. Now, I'd like you to speak to how funding is moved around, and if indeed it is the responsibility of the superintending Minister of Finance to move funds around. If indeed it is the responsibility of the superintending Minister of Finance to move funds around, how come funds go faster to the presidential air fleet and sectors as critical as the Ministry of Defense do not get up to 10% of its proposed budget for the year? And we must put this in context, sir, because the general who was killed in Borno recently, reports came through that he wanted to go and supervise operations in, I believe, the theater of war. And then he started his vehicle and it didn't start. So we must put it in context. The loss that we incur as a result of lack of budgets released to critical ministries like the Ministry of Defense. So help us understand, how come the presidential air fleet gets priority funding and ministries as critical as defense do not get their funding?
Okay, condolences to the family of the general. I think General Momo, a fine specimen of a man who lost his life in the war front. From the story I've read so far, Seems like there was a local sabotage. You know, it's unfortunate. But on the war front, it's difficult to know who to trust and so on. Of course, a lot of work can be done on that, you know. However, in mentioning spending for the Ministry of Defense versus Presidential Air Fleet, what you have done is compare apples and oranges. The spending on Presidential Air Fleet is recurrent spending. Whereas you mentioned that Nigeria Army couldn't buy equipment, more than 7% was, well, not more than 7% was spent. Now, the thing with the equipment, the capital equipment for the Army that you mentioned is a capital spending. And in the year 2024, in the year 2025, it was 2024 capital that was spent. Now, remember, I said that because there was a transition in May 29, 2023, there was an overlap to ensure that the Buhari budget ran before the Tinubu budget began to kick in. And that has created this overlap, even though it took Buhari government 5 years to be able to get into that budget cycle. And even in Jonathan era, with Minister Okonjo-Iweala, who is a very astute person, they couldn't get that done. So now we know that we would, but however, beyond the aesthetics and the elegance of having a January to December budget, what's more important is that whatever is spent actually is accounted for, number one, and secondly, that it actually gets and trickles down to the people and matters to the people. So the same thing happened for the health sector. In the year 2025, yes, Minister Pate said he only got 36 million for capital for 2025, but in 2025 they spent capital for 2024. Now the whole idea is to ensure that one budget finishes before another one kicks in, because it's a law. And I'm saying that whereas the situation is not perfect for now, we're looking at it's beginning to get better. So rather than 3 budgets running as of last year, we have 2 now to terminate in June. Hopefully it terminates in June, and then we'll have only 1 budget, and then we run with that. So we cannot compare the recurrent spending on Presidential Air Fleet, which is, oh, they want fuel. Things like they want fuel or they want a quick repair. It's different from buying a new aircraft, you know, or people want to travel and they need whatever, you know, to allowances to travel, the pilot and all of that. That is what gets spent in that report that you have seen, and not capital spending. So whereas I'm not saying that things are perfect, but I'm saying that things are improving.
Are you saying,
and we're going to get better with some of these things.
Are you saying that recurrent spending for the Presidential Air Fleet is more important than critical spending for equipment for the Ministry of Defense? Because the Presidential Air Fleet takes care of the President's many visits outside the country. Are you saying that some of the time such things cannot wait for critical spending for the Ministry of Defense?
Buki, you have put it yourself. You're trying to sensationalize it.
I'm not sensational. I'm putting out the facts.
That's your prerogative. That's your prerogative. You know, you can't tell what's more important. I can't say whether you are more important than Kayode Okikiolu or whether you are more important than Jeff.
Absolutely not the same.
That's a rhetorical question.
The Ministry of Defense.
Let me say this.
Mr. Fasua, the Ministry of Defense is critical to the survival, to the lives of Nigerians, to communities that are constantly facing attacks. So are you saying that the presidential fleet is more important than the Ministry of Defense?
I said that's it's an illogical question, which
it's a very logical question, sir.
I would try to oblige you by answering it, but it's an illogical question. Again, you're comparing apples and oranges.
No,
you know,
that is a wrong comparison, sir. We're talking about the presidential fleet for the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as against the lives that he has sworn to protect.
I'll let you have the last word on it. I'll let you have the last word.
No, it's not the last word.
My opinion is this. My opinion.
It's a contention on what you consider logical and illogical. And you're on record,
sir. One, I don't run the budget. I don't run the finance. I don't run the budget. But I can only explain to you that, you know, you cannot stop fueling an aircraft mid-air. You know, you can't do that. You can't fail to service an aircraft. You can't fail to pay the pilots and the crew their money to run their operations. That is recurrent. Of course, everybody agrees that recurrent is easier to disburse than capital. Capital has to go through a process. And nobody has said that the defense sector has not been funded. I'm just saying that there was a rollover that in 2024 in 2024 capital was spent for the defense sector, for the health sector, and other sectors.
All right.
And now, this year now, 2025 budget for capital would prioritize for those ministries before 2026 kicks in. But 2026 recurrent is already ongoing.
Well, Mr. Topo Fasua, we have to thank you for your
we're
time.
getting
Special
better.
advisor.
We're getting better.
Right. Special advisor to President Tinubu on economic affairs. Well, our role is to keep probing the issues and ensure that we put the feet of government to the fire. We thank you for your time and we wish you the very best.
Thanks for the fire at my feet right now.
Well, from all of that, which is still a major conversation that we'll keep on the front burner, let's move over to Edo now.